Greetings. I am Rita Ray, President of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Central Mississippi Chapter. Our chapter was founded in 1992, and we are one of 61 chapters located throughout the United States. Our advocacy organization, whose vision is that Black women and girls will live in a world where socioeconomic inequity does not exist, and therefore we advocate on behalf of Black women and girls to promote leadership development and gender equity in the areas of health, education, and economic empowerment. The year 2020 has been an important reminder that our choices and our actions have the power to affect us and those around us in significant ways. And that's why it's important to take a moment and reflect on the importance of HIV/AIDS in our communities, especially in the month of December. Awareness is everything. We must be willing to make the tough decisions and conversations so that any misinformation or lack of information is replaced by facts, support, and resources. Facts such as African American women account for 59% of new HIV diagnoses. Fact number 2, there's a steady rise specifically among African American millennials ages 24 through 35. Fact number 3, African Americans are disproportionately affected by HIV. Fact number 4, 1 in 7 African Americans are living with HIV and are unaware. As I close, I extend a heartfelt thank you to the many heads, hands, and hearts under the leadership of First Vice President Wilda Holloway and Health Initiative Chairperson Yolanda Singleton for their tireless efforts in providing this HIV/AIDS awareness program.
Hello, I'm Yolanda Singleton, Health Committee Chair for the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Central Mississippi Chapter, and I bring you greetings from Jackson, Mississippi. December the 1st is World AIDS Day. This is a day that is dedicated to increase awareness about the AIDS pandemic caused by the spread of the HIV virus. Therefore, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Central Mississippi Chapter supports these efforts by doing this video presentation. In this video presentation, you will hear from Ms. Jewel Terrell, an African-American woman who is living positively with HIV. Wilda Holloway, First Vice President of Programs for the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Central Mississippi Chapter, reading the proclamation from the City of Jackson. Juanita Davis, Director of Care for Me Services, Jackson, Mississippi. Dr. Mata Munger, Chief Operating Officer for My Brother's Keeper, Ridgeland, Mississippi. Sharon Brown, a community HIV advocate. Rita Ray, President of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Central Mississippi Chapter. I pray that you find this video to be educational, informative, as well as resourceful. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jewel Terrell. I am a 48-year-old African-American woman living with HIV. I'm here today to tell you a little bit about my story, and I'm also here to tell you the driving force behind my story. The driving force behind my story is to educate, encourage, empower, and emancipate women who feel like they don't have a voice, especially those women who are heterosexual and in the African American community. I'm here to be their voice, those who are afraid because of the stigma surrounding HIV and AIDS, who sit every day in silence, and some are really basically wasting away because they are afraid to talk about HIV. They are afraid to tell their families, friends, that they are positive. I come from a 2-parent, middle-class family. I'm college educated. I'm the youngest of 8 children. When I never thought I would be in this situation. I thought I did everything the right way. No, I did not wait until I got married to have sex. But I was careful. And I didn't have very many sexual partners. I left my parents' home when I got married. The man that I married, I thought that he was my knight in shining armor. I never thought that he would do anything to bring harm to me or anything that would hurt me. Little history behind how I found out that I was positive. I lost my mother in January of 2002. February of 2003, I lost my sister. We buried her February 8th. I lost one of my sisters. We buried her February the 8th on my brother's birthday. 3 weeks to the day after we buried my sister that's next to me, my dad had a massive heart attack and passed away. So I was under already a massive amount of stress, grief, and I wasn't coping very well. But I was holding it together for my older sisters and my brother and my nieces and nephews. 3 weeks after my dad passed away and we buried my dad, I found out that my husband had been cheating on me. And I never knew to the extent that he was cheating on me until after all of the events occurred. One of the things that happened was that because I wasn't dealing very well with the grief of the loss of my family members, my husband became angry. He didn't know how to handle the tears and the crying. He just didn't know how to deal with somebody that was depressed and going into the spiral down like I was going. So my husband became physically, emotionally, verbally abusive. I mean, to the point where I had to go to the emergency room several times. Things got so bad to the point that I stayed with him after I found out that he had been cheating. One of the things that did happen is that when I told him that if we had sex again, we would have to use a condom, that brought on more violence. I don't know why, but it did. So actually, October 5th of 2007, I had enough of the physical and especially the physical abuse. I had enough and I left. A year later, I was coming home from a business trip, and I got sick on my business trip. And at that time, because after I left my ex-husband, I went to a college reunion, and I got back in touch with my college sweetheart. We were both in the process of going through a divorce, so we moved in together. I already had the place, and so he just moved in with me. He was basically my support, and I was a support to him as well. But after that particular business trip, I came home and I wasn't feeling well, and he told me, he said, well, I tell you what, once you get your bath and you lay down, I'm going to go cook, and if you're not feeling well, I'm going to take you to the emergency room. Well, when I woke up, when he called me for dinner, I could barely go from the bedroom to the bathroom without breathing, let alone get down the stairs. So he decided to take me to the emergency room. I'm going to kind of speed up through some of the things. You know, we didn't know what was going on. I knew that I was short of breath, and they ran a lot of tests, and one of the tests came back and they said it looks as if you have leukemia. Your white blood cells are really high. There is some infection in your body. So they had a lot of doctors coming in. They had the phlebotomist and all coming in, taking blood and running tests and x-rays, chest x-rays. And then they found out that I had pneumonia that was trying to start at the bottom of my lung, but it was like they caught it in time, so it didn't come into fruition. But they noticed that I had a little pneumonia on my right lung, the lower half of my right lung. And so then they sent in another doctor, and this particular doctor was an HIV specialist. He didn't tell me at first. He said, there's some infection in your body, and we need to find out where it is so that we can start you on treatment tonight. And he said, the test that I want to run is an HIV test. So he ran the test. They got the test ran, and it seemed like it was forever before they came back into the room. And when he came back, he confirmed my worst nightmare. I was HIV positive. I was not able to go home. I wanted to go home that night, but I was not able to go home that night because of the fear that the pneumonia would envelop both of my lungs or whatever. So I was in isolation for 2 days, basically suicide watch. I had the right nurses, the right doctors there. They assured me that HIV was no longer a death sentence. And my college sweetheart was there throughout the whole thing, and he stayed there with me, nurturing me back to health and being my support. Now it has, fast forward, it's now 12 years later. And I have been telling my truth with the Care for Me Services Speak Your Truth team now for seems like 3 or 4 years now. And the more I tell my story, the more empowered I get. The more I can reach other ladies and young ladies and men and tell them that HIV does not have a look. It does not have a socioeconomic status. You cannot look at a person and tell that they are positive. So therefore, you have to protect yourself, because there are going to be others that won't be as honest as I am. And I tell them that. And I make sure they understand that you are responsible for yourself and your own sexual health. And I know that in my case, being that I was married, you would hope that your spouse would protect you. But I have to say that the marriage bed is no longer sacred anymore. Nobody is thinking about the vows that they took when they stood before God. And I don't have any hard feelings towards my spouse anymore. I have forgiven him. I've not gotten the full apology that I deserve, but at least I know that I don't harbor any hard feelings towards him. And it has been a long journey. It has been a positive journey. I don't ever want people to feel sorry for me, because I am a survivor. I'm a survivor. And I am here to help others survive, just like I am, not only to survive, but to win and live life, because we have so much life to live. Thank you for listening to my story, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Greetings. This is Wilda Holloway, First Vice President of Programs for the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated, Central Mississippi Chapter. It's my pleasure to share the following proclamation. Resolution of Councilman Kenneth I. Stokes of Jackson, Mississippi, honoring and commemorating the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated, Central Mississippi Chapter for unparalleled community advocacy. Whereas Councilman Kenneth I. Stokes, in the spirit of deep tradition, accords highest commendation to persons whose presence and work provide a bridge for resolution to community issues. And whereas the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated, Central Mississippi Chapter, was formally organized October 22, 1992, and installed more than 100 African American women. This vibrant organization dedicated itself to standing in the gap for Black women and girls and continues its commitment. And whereas this chapter of NCBW 100 stands as a catalyst to influence policies promoting gender equity in the areas of health, education, economic empowerment, and whereas each year on December 1st, World AIDS Day is observed, which leads to joining forces worldwide to diligently fight against HIV/AIDS while supporting the day-to-day challenges. And whereas the African American community is disproportionately impacted by HIV, and 1 in 7 African Americans unknowingly are living with HIV daily. And whereas the rise of the disease among African American millennials ages 24 to 35 is continual. African American women comprise 59% of new HIV diagnoses. And whereas we stand with and join Rita Ray, President, Wilda Holloway, First Vice President, Yolanda Singleton, Health Committee Chair, other officers, and the prestigious National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated, Central Mississippi Chapter, in the quest to promote HIV/AIDS awareness among African American women and girls through legislation, testing, and education, a service extraordinaire. Now, therefore be it resolved that Councilman Kenneth I. Stokes does hereby highly esteem and honor the National Coalition of 100 Black Women Incorporated, Central Mississippi Chapter, for excellence in advocacy. Done this the 20th day of December, 2020. Signed, Kenneth I. Stokes, Councilman, Ward 3.
Nation begins in the home of his people. I am Juanita Davis and am the Director of Care for Me Services of the Jackson Medical Mall. We bring you greetings as we provide services related to the prevention of HIV. Care for Me was established September 2014 to serve as a bridge in the gap of HIV prevention and intervention within the Black community. Currently, we have 6 innovative projects to address some of the unmet needs as we promote our community wellness concept, of which HIV is vital. This includes The Spot, a safe place over time, with locations in the Jackson area and Belzoni. We provide rapid HIV and syphilis testing via the mobile unit and The Spot locations within Mississippi Central Public Health Region, which is comprised of 28 counties. These counties, plus bordering Lee County, accounted for 47% of newly identified cases of HIV in Mississippi. And let me just provide a brief overview of background information. The first Global Health Day to be held was World AIDS Day, and it was held in 1988, which is some 32 years ago. Since then, there have been scientific advancements in treatment, laws have been established to protect people living with HIV, and we understand so much more about the condition. However, the worst part of it is many people, as of today, do not know the facts about HIV and how to protect themselves and others. Stigma and discrimination remain a reality in our communities, and it often prevents us from seeking information and getting an HIV test. The HIV epidemic is real and is still here among the COVID-19 pandemic. It is time. It is time for us to end the HIV epidemic, and we want you to join us in the fight. You are so needed. Our youth need you. They need to hear your voices as you speak the truth about HIV. And our seniors need to know that they too are at risk. In fact, anyone who has ever had sex may be at risk of HIV. Although gay and bisexual men may be at the greatest risk of contracting and transmitting HIV, others are at risk too, including females. Yes, HIV is not a gay disease. It can and it does impact all of us. While Black females' rates are not as high as it is among males, there is a need to be concerned. It's time. It's time for everyone to know their HIV status. Just take the test, and results can be provided within a few minutes. Take the test to know and understand the risk factors. If anyone thinks they are at risk, talk to a provider about PrEP, which may be taken daily to prevent the transmission of HIV. Yes, living with HIV is possible. It is no longer a death sentence. Knowing your status is a first step to living with HIV. Stigma related to HIV is real. Too often it prevents us from getting information and getting tested. Anyone may be at risk for HIV. It is not about gay men. Anyone can get HIV. Anyone. In 2018, the transmission category for newly diagnosed females with HIV were 91.5% heterosexual compared to 8.9% among males. Male-to-male sexual contact was 86.5%. Earlier in the epidemic, Black females' rates were soaring, and many of them are still living with HIV or AIDS. Today, HIV is soaring among our young Black men. Our efforts should not stop. We must continue the fight. When our sons disclose to us that they are gay, they are still our sons. They need us more than ever before. If we put them out, they're more likely to get HIV. This is highly debatable, so I'll just leave that alone for another discussion. However, let me just get back on topic and say that there are approximately 9,466 people living with HIV, and Mississippi has the highest, some of the highest rates for other STDs. And for HIV, it ranks number 8. It ranks number 6 with the highest rates for AIDS. Now, there's a difference between HIV and AIDS. AIDS is the end result of the infection of HIV. HIV is the virus that causes AIDS. And when we test for antibodies related to HIV, the virus. The rate of Black males living with HIV is 5.5 times that of white males. However, more disturbing is the rate of Black females living with an HIV diagnosis is 9.4 times that of white females. This is concerning. While Blacks comprise only 37% of our state's population, we accounted for 73.8% of all new diagnoses of HIV in 2018. In 2018, the burden of new HIV cases were also highest among Black males, 13 through 44, which represented 47.5% of newly diagnosed cases. HIV testing remains a major factor of HIV prevention efforts, but only 40.2% of Mississippians have ever been tested for HIV, and only 12.7% were tested within the past year. In 2017, an estimated 16.8% of Mississippians were living with HIV, but were unaware of their HIV status. Yes, this is concerning that Blacks are disproportionately impacted with HIV and continue to be at greatest risk for acquiring it. It is time for all of us to know our status. While the rates are still high for Blacks, they're not as high for Black females. But because we are in this and we're all in this together, HIV impacts us, it impacts our family. So we all need to take heed and have a better understanding of what HIV is, how it's transmitted, and how it's not transmitted. Let's join forces. Help us to help our community. Let's promote community wellness because HIV can impact all of us. And with that, I bid you a good day, and I thank you. And should you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at the Jackson Medical Mall Foundation Care for Me Services, telephone number 601-940-8645. Again, 601-982-8467. And I gave you my cell phone number earlier, but it's okay if you call that number too. So again, I thank you for your attention, and I want you to know that we're all in this together, and if we can come to some common ground to rid us of HIV, it would be a blessing. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mata Munger, Chief Operating Officer at My Brother's Keeper here in Ridgeland, Mississippi, and CEO and founder of the She Project. Here today to talk to you just a little bit about HIV. Did you know that the state of Mississippi has consistently ranked in the top 10 of new HIV/AIDS diagnosis, while the city of Jackson has ranked in the top 5 of AIDS diagnosis? Now, your first question may be, what's the difference? HIV is the virus, while AIDS is the disease. An AIDS diagnosis literally means that the body can no longer support itself via its own immune system. But no worries, both HIV and AIDS have great treatment options. Options have changed drastically from the days of the 80s. Meaning for many, whether it's an HIV or AIDS diagnosis, one pill once a day can get you back to a healthy state. Now, let's go back to those numbers. Remember, I said Mississippi has ranked in the top 10 of HIV/AIDS diagnosis. Did you know in 2018, we had 477 new HIV diagnoses here in the state of Mississippi? You think to yourself, that's not a whole lot. But wait, African Americans make up about 35% of the state's population. However, African Americans make up more than 75% of those newly diagnosed and living with AIDS and HIV in Mississippi. With that being said, of that 477 new diagnoses in 2018, more than 360 of them were African Americans. African American women and men now nationally outrank the number of those newly diagnosed with HIV. So, what does that mean? It means that we have to stop the stigma and start the conversation. I'm inviting you to go out and know your status, whether it's your OBGYN, primary care provider, or your local community health center. Go in and find out your status. Now, what happens? You go in and you're negative, but what about if we've never had the conversation even with our partners? Whether we're married or unmarried, we're still potentially at risk. If need be, there is a medication called PrEP that you can take that actually prevents you from acquiring HIV. That's right, one pill once a day can actually prevent you from acquiring HIV. Now, what if you go in and find out that you're positive? Don't worry, it's not a death sentence. Again, the treatments have gotten so much better than the days of old. In many cases, again, it is one pill once a day. But we can only improve this, the numbers in the state of Mississippi, if we know our status, if we stop the stigma and start the conversation. So I'm inviting you to go out and know your status. Find out about your HIV status with an easy HIV test. In many cases, the test only takes 1 minute to get the results. So, how do we stop the stigma? We start the conversation. We start the conversation, stop the stigma, and we can end this HIV epidemic. So, thank you so much for having me today. Feel free to reach out to me for any questions. My email address is mmonger@mbk-inc.org. Feel free to reach out, email me if I can help, and if I can help, I certainly will. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Brown, and I would like to discuss an issue that a lot of people don't talk about, and that is self-care for the caregiver of persons living with HIV within the South. We know that the South have a disadvantage when it comes to health outcomes. And a lot of times people don't realize that the most sickest populations have to have persons caring for them. And oftentimes it is a woman that will care for that particular person. And so in dealing with HIV, there are a lot of resources that have become available for the person whom actually have the immune disorder, but there is little to none for the person who is caring for that individual. I was the caregiver of a family member that was HIV positive. He was diagnosed in 1998 during a time where here in Mississippi, you didn't for sure talk about your family member's health, and not just with HIV, but just our culture alone. We tend to shy away from discussing what we deem the family business. So in doing that, that creates a lot of internal struggles that the caregiver must endure. And I think a lot of the lawmakers don't realize that not only should there be a plan for the person living with HIV, but also for the person who is caring for that individual. You know, it's not like taking care of a person with a normal, well, I won't say normal, but with any other type of health issue, because you deal with the whole body, because it attacks that individual's immune system. And in doing that, that person not only have to be in tune with the HIV that's going on within their bodies, but also, you know, whether they're going to have kidney failure or high blood pressure or diabetes, you know, trying to keep them healthy during the flu season. All of that really, really takes a toll on the individual that is caring for their loved ones that's living with HIV. And so we must shine a light on this pandemic, because HIV has been the longest American pandemic and worldwide that is still going on, more than 30 years later. And so what we need to do is try to come up with a holistic approach for caring for the entire team of caregivers, just like you have the doctor for, you have the cardiologist, you have the general health physician. And so I think a specialized health plan should also be for the individual for the individual taking care of the person living with HIV, because without them, oftentimes that person who is living with HIV will not make it if that caregiver is not a strong individual. Back in 1998, like I said, at the time where it wasn't talked about, didn't really know where to go here in Jackson, Mississippi to even get the quality care that other states normally get when a person is diagnosed with HIV. It takes a daunting toll on the individual, especially a Black woman that has to not only care for her family, but also care for that individual, as well as maintain her own mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And so I think it's imperative that we as Black women need to talk about the issues that are really taboo within our community and begin to shed light on it, so that we may begin to see a change in how we deal with caring for individuals with HIV, and just care for the whole entire team, because it actually takes more than one person to keep that individual alive and healthy on all levels, if they're going to use a holistic approach to give them a good quality of life. And so my goal, and it always has been my goal as an HIV advocate, to care for and to educate not only the individual, but the individual that takes care of that person, because without them, we will lose so many of our loved ones to HIV, that eventually will develop into AIDS if left untreated and uncared for on all levels. Thank you.
We close with a call to action. We must face facts over fears in our community. We hope that you found this program beneficial and that you will share this information with your family, your friends, your colleagues, so that we may collaboratively bring awareness of HIV/AIDS and positively impact and minimize effect in our communities.